Hello to you all. Um, you're welcome to the class. We will start the class out with a bow and the four great vows. Vow. Four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I uh, vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Can you hear me? Well, I know I've been having a little bit of microphone problems, so hopefully you're going to be able to hear me. If you're not hearing me loud enough, then please let me know. I'll do what I can, but um, we'll see how we go. Okay, we start. Today I wanted to start out, and this is a continuation of what I've been presenting all along in terms of meditation and concentration. And we're going back to Bodhidharma, Dhammo, the first patriarch of Chan. And Dhammo was known for what is called wall gazing, and it was said that he had went into a cave and sat facing the wall for a considerable period of time, and it depends on who who is making the count, but it could be several years. But as he's gazing at the wall, um, then the this meditation that he's doing is one in which we don't really necessarily call it meditation per se. The meditation here is a very, very high level of samadhi. And samadhi is a very stable aspect of mind. So, this type of samadhi is from the mind looking into the mind rather than one sitting believing that they are meditating. So I want to go over that in terms of what he's saying and plug it into what I've been saying for the past few weeks and see how that fits with your idea. It seems as though some of you have been giving some higher level sutras to work with, and you've been able to get a hold of that and work with it quite well. And so I'm very, very happy about that because some of you have kind of turned a corner in terms of your own practice. So this was an excerpt from um, part of what was found in the Dungam caves, um, and um, and it says this gazing at mind is contemplation and correctly sets forth the results. So it says the ratification of the true principle of Mahayana. So this ratification, saying this is what the true Mahayana, or the true, excuse me, the true principle of Mahayana. Now, when we're looking at this and calling it the true principle of Mahayana, here Mahayana may still have predated the idea of a Mahayana school and is referring to the highest vehicle, which is just mind itself. So it's looking at and saying, this is the way that one would practice the true principle of mind, which is everything is mind. And he says this, having reversed mind's six faculties so that they do not engage in deluded objects, one gazes at one's own mind and realizes that it has no reality whatsoever. Now, let me break that down because already what he's saying is incredibly profound. And it is something that we should not go to the next line unless we understand what was just read to you. So he says, having reversed the six faculties, so the six faculties of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, and reversed them. So no longer are they looking outward, but they're looking inward. or you could say that you're seeing it in the proper way in which um, you're using the perception of mind itself rather than the five skandha, and kind of getting an aggregate of all these six faculties and putting those together to form a an, a conception of reality. When we look outward and we use the six faculties in this way, we create a composite of what we believe to be the world, but it's actually a dream that we're formulating and working on. And we believe that this to be real. When the mind's perception is reversed, then it sees things as they are, and it sees that all of these uh, um, perceptions, these doors, are all fundamentally empty. So, so we start with that saying first you reverse these faculties, and uh, so that they do not engage in deluded objects. So here, what's happening is that if we have a faculty of the eye and an object of the eye, then it looks at that and it creates an idea that there's a realm of sight. And so this creates a duality of that which is seen and that which is being seen. And so when those are brought together, it's just mind. And just being mind, it is not confused as to the appearance, realizing whatever that appearance is fundamentally empty. So when you're sitting and you're on your cushion, you should not be engaged in any kind of an idea that there is any kind of um, a, a process in which you are meditating. Rather, it is the process that the mind is at rest. It's different. When we approach the cushion in this way and then we see that the mind is at rest, then the mind is sitting peacefully, serenely, right from the very, very beginning. It is not indulging in looking at anything that's coming in through these six faculties, including consciousness. That consciousness is seen as empty and simply is that the mind is at rest. So, quite a lot in that very first part. And then he says, one gazes at one's own mind. So one is looking at one's own mind. So here, we've talked about this before. It is like the knowing aspect of mind. It's not a duality. It is just the knowing aspect of mind, resting in mind, and it is gazing into mind. This is the reversing of the perception, using the Buddha perception rather than the perception of the five skandha, and realize it has no reality whatsoever. So looking into the mind in this way, it sees that whatever is appearing within mind is not real. It isn't that it is unreal, but it goes to neither existence nor non existence. It is a different language. It is Chan. It is not something that one looks at and says, oh, I can understand it from the samsaric side. One has to step outside of the idea of the samsara to be able to contemplate that there is no reality, a separate reality to anything that is appearing in the consciousness. It is just simply the mind is at rest. So, therefore, nothing is to be thought of because afflictions are not being minded, so nothing is to be conceptualized. So he says, so there should be no thought. It should be wu nian. There's no thought there. And then why is because and then he's using the principle. Um, it said nothing is to be thought of because afflictions are not being minded. Afflictions are not being adhered to or tended to or given an interest. So if you're sitting to meditate and you're just meditating, any thoughts that you had of the day or what may happen tomorrow or what has happened in the past or what is presently happening to your body have nothing to do with the process of mind looking at mind. Mind is just sitting. All of those things then are just seen as temporary and transient appearances, not outside of mind and not something that is uh, inside of mind. It is just seen as arising in mind by the function of mind. And so it says, so nothing is to be conceptualized. So we do not think about anything. And probably one of the things that happens oftentimes when people begin to meditate and they start getting it right and they're sitting and they're very, very calm, they start having an idea, wow, this is very calm. Because they haven't experienced this level of samadhi. And it's exciting. It's different. It isn't your old regular, let me stay on the method and I'm being quiet. It is a stillness that is not a sensation, not a mental state, but just this incredible awareness. And being this awareness, we're not used to having the mind be completely aware. It is not that the mind is blank or dead. It is that it is completely aware of what is passing through. So if there is a storm coming through, we just had one just a few moments ago here in Southern California, and the storm comes passing through. It really has nothing to do with what I'm doing now, but the mind is aware. The mind is aware and saying, "Oh, make sure the windows are closed, so it still can follow function." And then it just simply goes on to whatever it's doing because it's just a transient condition. And the storm was a very quick storm, and as quickly as it arose, it went. And this is what happens when you sit to meditate. We don't pay attention to it, or we don't say, oh, that was a great storm, or that was a bad storm, or we need more rain, or the last thing we need is rain. All of those are conceptualizations. So we just ignore that. But the mind, nevertheless, is aware of all this. When we talk about that has having reversed the mind's six faculties, the difference is that the way that we use those six faculties is we use it as a platform for cogitation, for thinking, and continuous um, uh, uh, thinking to give the mind an appearance of an ego or a personality or somebody there. And so it looks around and says, yes, this is me. I can see myself in the mirror, I can see myself wherever. And so it gives itself some form of stability. But this kind of a stability is fallacious in its way because it is the same as if you saw yourself in a dream. You would believe that in the dream that you are real, and so you walk around and you do the things that happen, or you have something chase you, or you get awarded something, or you whatever is happening in the dream, whether good or bad, and you believe it to be real. And there's nothing there that as you look around that makes you think otherwise. So you feel content and comfortable in this idea that this is reality. And then somebody comes along And they say, what makes you think that just in this moment you're not dreaming? Huh? That you're not dreaming. Maybe you're dreaming right now. How long have you been dreaming? What? And all of a sudden things change. It begins to undermine what you're doing. So the first thing naturally that this illusory ego and the protective mechanism of this um, personality is to present things that say, no, this is solid. I can knock on it, and and I and it's real, and I'm real because I'm looking at you. I'm talking to you, and just like I had mentioned, I think last week, the master looked at the young monk and said, "But I don't see you, huh?" And all of a sudden, there is a bit of question. We no longer have complete 100% faith in the self, in the ego. Where before we lived our entire life or lifetimes with complete faith in the ego, all of a sudden something else comes into play. And we start reading about the Dharma and listening to the Dharma. And then there's something that comes in. There is a faith. Can all of these well-knowing masters be wrong what they say? And what do they say? Everything is fundamentally empty. Everything is a dream. We understand why things suffer. And so we begin to give a portion of our mind attention to faith and mind. But as we do that, a lot of times it's as if we are walking on a floor filled with marbles. We can't get our footing. We want to understand what that is, but we also want to feel stable and and connected. So then we push away from that and we go back to having faith in the ego. It's okay to talk about faith in mind. It's okay to even think about it, but don't think about it too much. It is kind of scary and it creates an instability in the way that we perceive this world. But this is what the ancients were doing all the time. They were demonstrating to you this faith in mind and laying the platform for you, not the platform for an ego, but the platform for mind. And this platform is what you take to the cushion. You take it wherever you go, whatever you do, not just on the cushion, but wherever you go. And as you're using this platform, then you are reminded to have faith in mind. You see the clues of mind. Things um, are constantly changing, impermanent. There's a discontent with the more that we play in this world. There's a suffering, and we don't like this idea of change. We want to feel comfortable in the idea of a self. But as we begin to study and we see that everything is fundamentally empty, it changes that. But what we have to do is have the faith in mind with the understanding, not to be afraid of it, but to embrace it, to use it as correctly as our practice. And this is what Bodhidharma was presenting and saying, this is how you should practice with mind. So we continue on. In this way, the objects of mind are completely purified and there is nothing to abide in. So the objects of mind, the things that one sees, they're purified. Doesn't make sense to us, right? So if we see something very uh, uncomfortable to us, dog poop. So if we see dog poop, and you think Gilbert said that that's pure, it's pure dog poop. It's good dog poop. It's purified dog poop. Huh? That doesn't make any sense. Of course, it works that way. If you feed your dog, something's going to come out on the other side. That's natural. Causes and condition never fail. Otherwise, your dog would explode. You see everything is connected very clearly. You see how things work. You don't see things in in the wrong way. We don't see things in a foolish way. We have to see that things are always changing. But to us, because we don't like the smell of that, we don't like the idea of a waste material, then it is something defiled, something that is stinking and smelling. So we don't understand that because our self says, don't do that. And whatever you do, don't step in it. Yet we make a life stepping in dog poop all the time. We just can't help ourselves. But yet we're swimming in mind all the time. And we should see it in this way. It isn't the purification of the dog poop, it is a purification of the mind and understanding that everything is created by the mind. And this too is an illusion, as you are. This is the scary one to us, that we don't feel comfortable. We can go around and tell everybody you're not real and this is not real and this is not real, but and feel proud about it. But if we say, well, wait a sec, what about you? You know, you're not real either. Oh no, no, I'm mind, you know. Well, yes and no. Your mind or mind is where you appear, but you as a sentient being are only appearance in mind. There is no supreme ego driven sentient being. It's just mind. We cannot understand that from this side. It it's impossible for us to do that because the only thing we have is related to the ego and the dream and how the dream works and how the physical properties in this particular samsara dream operate. But what if there's different um, worlds governed with different principles? Heck, the sci-fi writers have made careers out of imagining different worlds with different things and different rulers and whatever. But we stick to the idea that we and this physical body is it. And but we should not create the Buddha in the image of a human being. That that would be a very low aspirations in terms of things, but it's comfortable because then we say, well, the Buddha's just like us. When he came to the world, he came and he looked just like us. Of course, he looked just like us because it's an appearance body. If he came looking like a robot with flashing lights, everybody would be afraid. But the Buddha appeared in the guise of a human sentient being to teach, rather than coming and trying to preach from a different body. If he went to a world that was driven by mechanical looking things, he would take on that view. This is the Nirmanakaya, but it only applicable to this world. what I'm doing is taking what Bodhidharma was presenting and adding some meat to it and some food for contemplation. It is this contemplation that really is where um, uh, Bodhidharma beckons us to go to. Let's continue. Through the practice of gazing at mind, the practitioner sees samsara and nirvana as no different. The nature of primordial gnosis is realized as being empty, and even the concept of emptiness is seen to be insubstantial. Did you all get that? Probably not. All right. So that's why we break it down. Don't you ever read something and go to the next line until you understand what was just being said. You're going to miss it all. If you don't understand what was being said, you've got to go back to it. And even if you understand it, go back to it again and again and again. That's my common refrain. It is not the amount of volume that you read, it is the quality of what is there that you keep picking at it and picking at it. And it's just like eating a peach. When you eat the peach, the peach has a sweetness and a sourness to it, and it's juicy and messy and cool and sweet, and then at the very end there's a pit, yet there's still more peach attached to the pit. We have to pick at that pit, get the very last little bits of that peach, get to the heartwood of of that peach. This is how we practice. Let's go back to what was being said. Again, these lines are very few lines, but here Bodhidharma is telling you everything that you need to know about the practice. Through the practice of gazing at mind, so again, it's him looking at the wall of the cave and just gazing, just looking at what is the wall of the cave so interesting to look at. It isn't what is being seen in the projection, it is what is being realized that sees, which is mind itself, not the idea of a dualistic way of looking at something, but a direct contemplation of what is occurring in that moment. That direct contemplation is devoid of thought, but is completely aware of everything. Here we go. The practitioner sees samsara and nirvana as no different. So the practitioner then, when they see the samsara, this dream world, and nirvana is a concept of what human beings aspire to, that they want to reach this nirvana. But what do you think? If for some reason, by some great power, you are suddenly transported to nirvana, what would you see? Would you see like a banner up on top going, "Welcome to nirvana, population such and such and such and such, you know, do whatever you like, do whatever you please"? Do you think there's a place like that that is a nirvana that you can go to? And you wouldn't have to spend any money, because you wouldn't have any money to spend. For that matter, you wouldn't have any clothes, and for that matter, you wouldn't have a body. So what are you going to do there? What are you going to eat? You don't have to eat anything. It's like manna from heaven. Is that your idea of mind? And where you want to spend eternity in, I guess it's good. But then if you're spending eternity in mind, how would you know when eternity passes? Interesting to think about this. You look at your watch and go, wow, it's half past eternity. No, maybe I should go to sleep. What for? You're in nirvana. You don't have to sleep. Or if you want to sleep, you can sleep for 5 kalpas or whatever. It doesn't matter. What I'm doing is breaking down your idea of a construct of some place that you go to see the spirit in the sky. It doesn't work this way. Nirvana and samsara are right here. The purified field of mind is right here. We can't see it because we're stuck in the idea that the samsara is real. We continue. And so it said, the practitioner sees samsara and nirvana as no different. The nature of primordial gnosis is realized. And let me stop there because it continues on, but you need to know this part. So how many of you know what primordial gnosis means? I want a paper next week on primordial gnosis, okay? What's primordial gnosis? Any of you want to venture? It might be a guess, but what is primordial gnosis? Don't think before you act. Yes, Sam.
Well, I know gnosis is a form of like knowledge or knowing or like clear knowing, and primordial I know is like original or primary or first. So I would say it's like the original knowing or the original awareness.
Of what?
Awareness.
Awareness. And anything more?
No, I think that was a good enough jump.
All right, I give you a C plus. No. So the idea of gnosis is one that goes through history. Even the Christians in their belief systems had people that were called Gnostics, and they had actually in Christianity they were moving in a pretty good way back around 2,000 years ago, and they had a whole group of Gnostics which were working towards this kind of a feeling of um, of God. Later on, in the 14th, 17th centuries, and there, and in the time of Meister Eckhart, they started talking about Godhead, this beyond this idea of God, but Godhead being this primordial gnosis of a union with God. Now, of course, that's Christianity. To us, this primordial gnosis is just the idea of the knowing aspect of mind that's been there. It's never been created. It's immutable. It doesn't change, and it is there and is represented by many different names of Buddhas. Some of them were like Virochana was considered a primordial Buddha. Even Samantabhadra at some point is considered a primordial Buddha. The point is here is that from which everything ultimately springs from. And later on, what was it? Well, there was a fancy word for that. What was it called? Anybody? I'll give you a hint. It has a lot of T's in it. Nobody. Yeah, you're mouthing it, but I can't. Robert,
Kata kata.
I'll take your answer for that. So, so, and it's actually here, it's the Tathata Gata Garba and the Buddha womb where everything comes from. And so it is this primordial gnosis. So we have this idea. Now we're kind of zeroing in on what this primordial gnosis means. And this gnosis is not something where somebody says, "Well, can you describe what God looks like?" Oh, he's very old, like really, really old, and he has a bright light around him, and he doesn't suffer fools; he throws them into hell. Um, we can't say the same thing about about Buddha because the Buddha is just mind. It's there's no way that we can conceptualize about it. It is just the way it is. It's something from the heart. And again, something that I use quite a bit, but I think it's really apropos in just to bring it into something that people in samsara understand. Once they asked Louis Armstrong, what's the definition of jazz? And he said, man, if you have to ask, you'll never know. And because it is a gnosis with the music, an intimacy, an intrinsicness to with the music that brings forth the creativity of this jazz. And and so it is the same thing. I often talk about how Chan practitioners were artists and we understand what we're doing. Of course, a lot of us paint a lot of junk, but it can be abstract, it can be something very detailed, whatever. But it is something that is painted from the heart, demonstrated from the heart, calculated from the heart, and following the function of the heart to harmonize with all sentient beings and to bring about a deliverance of all sentient beings from the idea of this mind disease, which is samsara. This mind dis-ease is simply that the belief that there's an individual personality, ego, life, or being that is experiencing this. We lost the gnosis with mind itself. When we sit to meditate on the cushion, we regain that gnosis. We regain that experience that we're there with mind. And I shouldn't say that we're there with mind, that mind is there with mind. And the experience of this gnosis looking into mind then properly puts the ego as a projection in the Dharmakaya. It clearly sees that the ego, personality, life, being, it's all a projection on this side. It is not what is looking. It is not that what is going to become enlightened. There's no enlightenment. There's no attainment. There's awakening. When we see things in this way, it changes the way we do that. So I'm very, very careful about that. I try to be as best as I can so as not to mislead you into thinking, okay, you're sitting there and you're going to become enlightened or talk about enlightenment. No. Enlightenment is another word for awakening, but I want to make a distinction there in my presentation of the Dharma that there is no one that becomes enlightened. Right out of the box, it's like you pull out your computer and prepackaged in all of that, not only prepackaged, but it is the whole raison d'être, the reason of the existence is mind itself. Everything springs from that. Everything is an application. Oh, you want Google Maps? Okay, it's in mind. No, you want to have your bank? It's in there. Whatever it is, TikTok, it's in there. Okay, no matter how much they want to do away with TikTok, it's still there. Even the ones that want to do away with TikTok, it's in there. It's all there. We have to see that this is what's called turning the mind's eye inward, is seeing the things as they are correctly. When you're sitting to meditate, precisely, this is what you're doing. I shouldn't even say this is what you're doing. This is what mind is doing. You see how easy it is to get tricked into thinking I am sitting instead of saying, let mind do it. I'm not really good at this, you know. I sometimes I'm pretty good, and sometimes, I mess up. Confidentially, between me and you, I eat too many donuts, and amongst a few other vices. But if you offer that to the Buddha mind, it would say, why? You know, it's like fat that's uh, cooked in fat with sugar on it. Why? So the thing is that we have to see the things as they are, clearly as they are. Yeah, and even the donut is a projection. Okay, we continue on. So he said, um, is realized as being empty. So the nature of the primordial gnosis is realized as being empty, and even the concept of emptiness, um, is seen to be insubstantial. So this is interesting because the word here insubstantial, I don't know in the Chinese, um, the original Chinese words on this, but generally Chinese talk about substantial and insubstantial, and they talk about it's in the like in the Tao and the yin and the yang and light and dark and everything else. There's an insubstantial and substantial, and they're constantly moving towards each other. But the insubstantial is phenomenal. It's something that we think it's substantial. We take the phone and say, "Oh, that's substantial," you know, and it's permanent because I do it. But if you see my phone close up, you'd see it has about 10 cracks on the screen. But from doing that, I have to learn not to hit it. But in any case, substantial is that part of mind that is inconceivable, non-conceptual, that is the noumena, the mind ground. So even our idea of when we talk about emptiness is insubstantial. Why? Because if there was not these illusions in mind, we could not speak of insubstantial. We could not speak at all because we too are insubstantial. Mind is just mind. Where would there be a mouth to speak about insubstantial? It is very important because it goes right directly to exist or not exist in Nagarjuna. It's incredibly deep in terms of how we look at this. None of these words are out of place in terms of what Bodhidharma is saying here. It's incredibly deep. Now he's coming in at a later point in time, and Chan's been, I shouldn't say Chan, but Buddha Dharma's been around in China for a while. Obviously, it's been around. It was around in India for 800 years. So he's not bringing the latest music to China. He's bringing what's already been played and played and played, and people go, "Oh, this is really really good stuff." No, um, my very first trip, I went to China, many many years ago. At that time, people were still wearing Mao jackets, and men and women, and there were very few cars. There was just bicycles everywhere. But um, we hired a chauffeur to drive us around to different places, and they were so happy to see us, so they played music in the car, rock and roll, the latest rock and roll. It was all music from the 50s. It was wonderful to hear it, but we're smiling because this is music from the 50s. You know, they stopped playing it on the radio, 30 years ago, but to them it was new, and they loved it, and it was good stuff. And it's the same thing with the Buddha Dharma coming from India. They're getting it decades later, centuries later, but it's good stuff, and they're embracing this these doctrines. Bodhidharma represents this kind of like a crest of all of these sutras coming in, and and these Mahayana sutras that are putting things into place. And it's already been cooking there for a couple of centuries or more in China, and it's getting pretty good. We see this happening here. And so you have to historically find out and see where we're at in terms of the history of Chan, or we should say the proto Chan, which predated Bodhidharma, although there was still Chan a bit before, and most scholars agree and historians agree that there were the makings of Chan before Bodhidharma arrived. But nevertheless, he's considered the first patriarch to systematize the presentation of the this Chan Mahayana doctrine. Okay, we go back, and so um, he says that having gradually cleansed all the habitual tendencies of karma, gradually we're not there with a big scrub brush and a Brillo pad and trying to scrape stuff off. We just have to just calm down, silent, serenely. It will fall off on its own. All thoughts are self-liberated. All thoughts are self-liberated. Self. What self is he talking about here? All thoughts are self-liberated. You tell me now, you be the presenter. What is he talking about? All thoughts are self-liberated. It's almost like a play on words, or a double entendre. We could say it's liberated from the self, or the self nature of mind liberates those thoughts. In any case, both of them apply. You pick which one fits to you. By not conceptualizing the arising of thoughts and not abiding in their non-arising. You see, he's very careful not to cling to one side or the other. So by not conceptualizing the arising thoughts, meaning that we start thinking about those thoughts and saying, "Oh, this is this way, and I wish I had a donut, and a donut popped in my mind. I want to have one. I want to have a jelly one, lemon one, whatever it is. I want to bathe in donuts." All right, a little too far. Okay, but that's conceptualizing about things. Okay. And he says, and not abiding in their non-arising. What does that mean? See, we have to slow down. Not abiding in their non-arising. Every single word here means something. Not abiding in their self-arising. What does that mean? We know abiding means to hold on, to cling, to dwell somewhere. And we don't sit there and meditate or walk around in this world as if we're in a refrigerator. Imagine if you took all the shelves out of your refrigerator, okay, and make sure it's not an old one that you can't open by pushing. Get in that's like I have to say that disclosure here. But in any case, you're in the refrigerator and you close the door. What happens? The light goes off, right? We're not really sure about that. I don't know whether Michael's here. That could be another Schrodinger's cat. Does the light stay on or not? Only Schrodinger's cat would know whether the light is on after you seal the box. So I'll let him explain that someday. But the thing is, it's like saying, that's some saying, if you don't know whether the cat's alive or dead that's in the box. But so you close the door, presumably the light goes off, and you're there. That is abiding in non-arising. Nothing's happening. It's a dead cave. There's nothing going on at all. This is not the proper samadhi. This is a dark samadhi. It's often referred to as Devil's Cave Samadhi because there's nothing happening. It is the antithesis of the proper samadhi, of this ding, which is the a samadhi that's vibrant, aware, illuminating. It doesn't come from one direction or one perception or one view. The idea of right view and awareness is omniscience. It's everywhere. And so he's careful here saying, you're not going to conceptualize, but you're not going to turn off the light in the refrigerator. The light stays on there. The only difference is that you're aware that you're in a refrigerator. You're aware that you're there. You're aware that you're in the cave. You're clearly aware of that. Mind is aware. And so that's the distinction here, where instead of just turning off the light stays on. Okay, now we continue. It is a meditation on the inconceivable. Remember, inconceivable means you can't possibly have an idea of even thinking about it. Primordial gnosis. So this primordial gnosis, you cannot know it. It knows you, but you cannot know it. Which is free from arbitrary thinking, free from thinking that comes up that we cling to. Thus, the essence of this teaching, which was handed down to Kasyapa, so after the Buddha then came Mahakasyapa, and later to Bodhidharma, is as follows. Non-conceptuality is vividly clear, and even this lucidness is not conceptualized. So non-conceptuality is clear, and this lucidness, we cannot conceptualize about the clearness of it. When we talk about a clear light, how could you say, what's a clear light? Is it white? Is it clear? How can we talk about something that illuminates everything from all directions? It's non-conceptual. This is the primordial gnosis of the intrinsic awareness, which cannot be designated as this. I put, or what. So that's my little postscript, is it can't be designated as this or what. It's the know of what. The know of what is that when you begin to ask, what is this thing? There's no what that is asking about a conceptualized object of mind. This is how you meditate. When you meditate with this principle. You sit silently and serenely, letting go of all the things, especially the idea that you are sitting. Let mind just rest. Let mind rest in the present moment. This is how you need to practice. If you practice this way, your meditation will bring you to a deep samadhi very quickly, because the principles are there, the platform is there. Then you know what you're doing when you're sitting on the cushion. This is very important, and it's fundamental. It is the being at the door to Chan. Okay, I finished for the night, so we have a little bit of time for questions. I used up a lot of extra time, but I wanted to get through this part. We'll open it up for questions. No questions tonight? All right. Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you for tonight's Dharma lecture, Gilbert. Thank you very much for it. And I'm sorry for waiting to raise my hand. I feel like I raised my hand a little too much sometimes, so I was trying to wait to see if anyone else would. But when you were talking about what Bodhidharma had to say, it made me think of Red Pine's translation. I think it's of the Wake Up Sermon or the Breakthrough, but Bodhidharma talks about, and it reminded me of you talking about the second level practice and the first level. And he says he regards the first or the main level or the high level as simply beholding the mind. And I was trying to correlate that back to just letting mind. Is this the same thing as when you say, when you sit on the cushion, just allow mind to look into mind?
Yes, I think it works that way. I would say, if you defined it, a better definition would be that letting mind hold you. And so just kind of picture it like those Venn diagrams where you have like a circle and then a big larger circle, which is mind, which I would put little arrows going out indicating infinite. But the idea of the conceptual you is held in mind. It doesn't make it go away, or doesn't, you don't want to see it. As that's why I was saying, don't abide even in the emptiness of it. It's very, very important. So yeah, it's that way, and it's all right. You can ask your questions. You ask questions that people should be asking, and so people get a benefit from what you ask, and it's important. Some of this stuff is pretty deep, and we should be asking questions about it, because it's not really that easy to to kind of get there. And we need to get the jump from the first to the second level of the metaphysical level and the profound one in order to make the jump into the esoteric. Well, so we need to kind of jump up there to that platform that Huang Ning was presenting. So good. Wei Shan.
Thank you, Gilbert. Your analogy of the light inside the refrigerator is very fascinating. So I want to connect that with a few concepts, primordial gnosis and the silent illumination. When you talk about this, is the light never goes off. To me, that is the illumination aspect of silent illumination. Actually, that light is also the primordial gnosis, the knowing aspect of the inside of The refrigerator is the emptiness, or the silence aspect. But the light inside is the primordial gnosis and the illumination. That's my understanding. I'd like to have your comment on that.
I think you're heading in the right direction. Again, all of this, whether we talk about primordial gnosis or Samantabhadra, or Virachana, or some of the others that are attributed to the primordial Buddhas, all of that is just representations of our own mind. When we sit in silent illumination, there's no difference of the mind of the Buddha and the mind of the sentient being. The sentient being mind is not there. It is simply a connection of mind to mind. And the sentient being is properly put as a projection in mind. When we see the things in this way, we equally apply it to everything. We apply it to Pratika Samapada, so that we see things, Tathagata Garbha, where everything springs from. All of these things fit very wonderfully together. And the ideas of what we think is exist or non-exist and apparent contradictions are rectified by this kind of a contemplation of these principles. It is not in the cogitation of the principles that will only turn us into a scholar, a historian, or some kind of a pompous teacher. But it is in the experience of that which the contemplation that enables us to do that. This gnosis, this direct connection that's there. And so when you sit to meditate and you're meditating properly, there is a complete gnosis and a meeting of the Ruzi and Rujing of mind by the Ding, by the Samadhi. The Samadhi is that fusion that gives you a direct contemplation of the two. They're not two, they're not one. It is just this inconceivable primordial gnosis. So all of these masters came up with their own terminology to try to get a different facet of the diamond to show you. So this is what you're doing. And so as you keep putting it together and seeing through this facet and this one, it begins to work. It begins to pay off. So it's good. This is how you practice. It's mind work. Okay.
Thank you.
You're okay. I'm not sure about Wei Shan. So, okay. Anybody else? Nobody else today? Wow, I'm going to get off cheap tonight. I'm not sure whether I was uninspired, or that I explained it clearly to you, or that you just don't even know what key I'm playing in. But it does help me to know where you're at. But I'll let you guys off easy this week, so I can finish up in time. Oh, a late arrival. Okay.
Gilbert, Amitabha.
Awful.
A very basic question, but I think it's been kind of hard for me to, because I don't see it. I haven't proved it. But the difference between like the dream and the reality, right? In the dream, I could see a tree. I could close my eye. I could hit by the tree. I could see that this is all mind's movement. In daily life, if I close my eye, I hit the tree, I'll get hit. Although everything is mind's projection, but because I'm still struggling between the duality and non-duality. In absolute, everything is mind's projection. Existence, whatever existence, is still mind's projection. But it's till you see, you prove it, it is still very hard to not to ignore to ignore the substantiality. So I also try to read the Sugama Sutra, and Sugama Sutra is very hard to understand. I'm try to hit from every angle. In other words, duality is still I still, it's hard for me. It's a long way to, and I still view things often as duality, not non-duality.
It is your ego that's very strong still. That's natural, that it wants to confuse you and to say, that what you see is real and what you can't see is not real. But it isn't in this way. Whatever you see is a projection of mind and mind alone. It only appears in mind. This is something we have a very difficult time trying to understand that and trying to fight against the habitual tendencies that say, if I stop working, I'll go broke, or if I don't stop working, I'll die before I retire, or if I eat too many donuts, this will happen, or whatever, all the different things that we think create the idea of our reality and our world. But it isn't in that way. You have to see the world as a dream. You have to reverse the flow. And if you can reverse the flow, then mind will see clearly and it will penetrate through this, because all of that's projected, all that's appearing is known by mind. How could it not? It created it. It created all of the appearances, so it intimately knows what is appearing. Intrinsically, it knows from where it comes from because of pratika samapada, the function of that. So as we do that, and this is the part that I was saying, Rongchen, that you have to really have a strong faith in mind. You have to battle with all appearances and have this very, very strong faith that this makes sense. I was reading from the Dharma Sutra, the which is a very deep sutra, and it was talking about this, and it was talking about but for this, and it's very difficult, very challenging to read, but it isn't in trying to understand the words as much as letting go and feeling it, gnostically feeling it. And this is something that requires practice. Okay, it's easy for us to be the self. We've been ourself for how many lifetimes? So we know, we're ourself. How many times a day does your back hurt, or you have a problem? Family, you name it, they all come up, and all these things there. We're good at that. We have a black belt in suffering. But we need to raise our practice to a higher level, to have faith in the Dharma. When you have faith in the Dharma, it will work. I promise you, it will work little by little. Even though you may not have seen the change, I've seen the change from the very first time you picked me up to give me a ride. And the questions you ask and your participation and stuff, you've changed. And so it works this way. You just have to have a great faith in it, and not indulge yourself in this world. This isn't a great place, like if you were a bodhisattva and you'd go, oh, I think I'm going to take a break for a while. I've been saving sentient beings. Where do I want to go? Oh, I'll go to Earth. No, it's not a great place to vacation in. Trust me. That's why the aliens never stay here, because it's not that great of a place, you know. Of course, they've never surfed before, probably, but they've surfed the space. But other than that, there's not a whole lot. I mean, yeah, we have music and culture, but we have a lot of other bad things happen here. So the thing is that when you look at the world and you see it clearly, then you begin to understand, maybe maybe it's time to really start seriously practicing and having faith in mind. You can do it. You just have to overcome the ego. The ego is very tricky, because it's telling you, oh, are you practicing? Yes, Ronchen, you're practicing very good, you know, but it doesn't want you, but don't practice too much. You don't want to get rid of me, and so you have to be careful. But with faith, you'll get there. Okay, trust me on that. That's what you need. Okay, Robert, last one, then we'll finish up.
Earlier you mentioned all thoughts is or are self-liberating. Uh, it it appears that all thoughts, if you just sit while you meditate and sit quietly, thoughts comes automatically. They also subside automatically. And after they subside, there's like a crack, a split moment, so short that it momentarily seems to be in complete quiet, but it doesn't last very long. So does that mean this is the self-cleaning oven you mentioned 4 or 5 years ago?
Say the last part again about the self.
Is it like the self-cleaning oven you mentioned 4 or 5 years ago? That if you just sit quietly, the thoughts, and if you just leave it alone, the thought will just come and they will just go, and you're momentarily clean or quiet. But being so habitually tended with so many tendency, the next thought pops up very quickly. And earlier you mentioned in one of the forum, you say, try to hang on to or stay in that momentary uh, thought to thought. Uh, it, 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 I'm not sure if I need to, when I meditate or when I sit, should I just be so, I mean, I felt that I'm using too much effort trying to stay in that moment, being aware, knowing a thought subside, knowing the next one will come, but knowing there is a split moment of quietness. Should I just leave it alone? Just sit quietly.
That is why the Bodhidharma said even the concept of emptiness is seen to be insubstantial. You're creating a conceptual emptiness where there are no thoughts. It is not that the thoughts arise, it is that the mind is not aware that the thought has arisen. So there's no difference between the gap between thoughts and thoughts. There's no difference whatsoever. In the mind, through its clear light awareness, sees directly through the gap and sees directly through the thoughts. So one is not attaching, the mind is not attaching to either no thoughts or let's say the gap in thoughts and seeking for the gap in thoughts. It is not in that way. Wu has nothing to do with that's like the refrigerator where you go in and you close it and the light goes off, you know, that's dark samadhi. So that's not going to pay off for you very much. I mean, sitting like that will be, I mean, you'll get some rest, you'll come out of the refrigerator a little bit cold, but you're not going to be illuminated. So it is not in this way. Your question is a very good one, Robert. It's very important because we don't have to push out the thoughts. We just illuminate them. It neither matters whether the thoughts arise or they don't arise in mind. It's okay. Trust me, you don't have to have a mind of no thoughts. You just have to have a mind that illuminates. The mind that illuminates, and it illuminates whatever thoughts are arising, whether the thoughts are clinging thoughts or unclinging thoughts, it matters not. It's just mind. It is just simply in accordance with this this primordial gnosis of seeing clearly what is happening moment to moment. When you switch it in this way, then you're no longer dealing with the duality of that there's thought and then there's this gap between thoughts. There is no gap between the thoughts. And I think Sam was mentioning Red Pine. Red Pine said, it isn't that there's space between us, it is there's a lack of space between us. And in mind, it is just this way. The, the mind is intimate with the black holes that are so many light years away from Earth, and it's intimate with the little microbe that's on some ladybug's leg. You know, there's no difference. There's no space. It is aware of all of those things simultaneously. This is inconceivable. But this is what our practice is. So practice in this way, and it will be good. Again, it's some of you that are brave souls that ask questions like this that help the others. And in this way, you're like bodhisattvas, because you are presenting the things that people have in their mind but are too afraid to ask. So I always welcome questions for that reason. Okay, I think that's about it for tonight. I don't want to leave this go too long. But in any case, I think we're fine for the night. So I will pick it up next week. I did get through the material I had, but I still have the material I've been planning to give you for the last 4 weeks that I haven't gotten to yet. But that's my backup material, so we'll see. So I'm very happy that you guys are studying seriously, especially on mind work. And little by little, some of you, I give you special lessons and special things to study, and in accordance with your ability. Sometimes it's a big download of material, but it's something that I think that the reason I give it to you is because I think you can handle it, and that's important. So when you get that, okay, so we'll